should be good to go. You're good. How many people do we have on WebEx? 27 signed up. Probably. Yeah. It's exactly 9 o'clock. I'm not normally this punctual, so let's see how that works. Okay, so first things first, who did not sign in on the sign-in sheet? I'll pass it around if you haven't signed in. If you're on the list, just mark your name off. If you're not on the list, just add your name and your email address, and what we'll do is we'll get you added to the Web and Accessibility Guild listserv, so you'll find out about new upcoming Drupal meetups and stuff like that, just so we can have everybody all aware of all the new cool things that we're doing. So today, it's basically going to be me talking for a little while. If you know me, you know that I love to talk, so that's pretty good for me, I guess, for 2 hours just sitting here, just droning on and on and on and on. Sure, if you ever get bored, you could just get up and leave. That's fine too. Just like, who's this guy? Why is he talking so much? So a little bit about me, because I literally know one face in the crowd. I remember your face. That's OPDB. Yeah. The only face that I know in this crowd today. So that's great. So normally it's like a lot of the same old, which is great. Having lots of people come in here. So seeing a lot of new, fresh faces is good. It means that what we're doing is we're reaching out and we're trying to get more participation here. We're trying to get people more knowledgeable about Drupal, how this is going to work, and all the different things. Because Drupal is not just for web developers. It's not just for content editors. It's not just for designers. It's for everybody. Because everybody throughout the entire web publishing process has something to do with Drupal in some form or fashion. So that is what my focus will be in the beginning of today. Today's the beginning presentation. It's sort of just a demonstration about how Drupal can work for you as a content editor, how it can work for you as a developer, how it can work for you as a designer, and so I just called it Drupal what? Like what is Drupal? How can I use it, etc. Then what I'm going to do is get into some of the stuff that I've been doing in Drupal 8. So I just want to get sort of a lay of the land here. Who here would consider themselves a content editor? Raise your hands. Okay. Who here would consider themselves a developer? Raise your hands. Okay. And then a designer. Any designers? Designer, developer, yeah. We wear many hats. So it's great. So we have a lot of people on here. There's the meeting is also being recorded via WebEx, and we also post the meeting minutes. Well, we post a video of the meeting as well as the presentations that I have here. So here's my very bare bones. I put this together last night just as an FYI, so it's a little bit rusty. You'll have to excuse me. And then my Drupal 8 intro experience for what I've been dealing with Drupal 8, moving from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. So I guess a third or fourth call. Who here has actually done development or is doing development in Drupal? Raise your hand. Perfect. So this is going to be a really good session for everybody here. So we have as I said, there is a WebEx. People who are in the room see that I got a terrible haircut. I am very embarrassed of it. So if you're on the WebEx, you're hopefully not seeing my haircut. Are they seeing my haircut? Oh man.
You look like Tom Brady's new haircut.
Cover this one up here. This is really the bad side. This side is all right, but this is just, I asked my wife, I said, was it better before when I had a big shaggy haircut or after the haircut? And she said, it's a little worse. So your wife is honest when she tells you your hair looks terrible. So that being said, I wanted to do a quick call, and I'm actually going to do this at the end of the session as well, just as a reminder for anybody who comes in late, especially in person or in the WebEx. So the reason I'm here today is because we haven't had a lot of volunteers. It's hard to get nerds like me up in front of a room that aren't going to break out in hives or, get all red faced and start stammering. For me, I just start to talk really fast sometimes, but it's hard to get people to come up here and present because they either don't know what to present or they don't know how to present or they don't want to present or whatever it is. We really do need presenters in here. Today's session was only put together because I said, you know what, we have to have a session. We missed last month's session. The whole ITS shake-up stuff that's going on, it really brought into perspective, who we had presenting. Most of the people that were presenting were doing it as personal favors to me, basically. So we have lots of topics out there if you think you can provide anything. And this isn't just for the Drupal user group. This is also to the larger web and accessibility group, which leads me to my second point, which is this is the web and accessibility group. And so we're a subset of them, the Drupal sub-user group. But the main web and accessibility group is looking for presentations as well for just basic web things or advanced web things or accessibility. And that's a really big point here is that MDAD, who is usually here from SED, was not able to make it today, but what he was SED is dealing with some accessibility issues right now where they're resolving a lot of accessibility problems on their site. And, again, this is the web and accessibility group. And what we want to do is we want to really push forward in any form or fashion some accessibility wherever we can. And maybe have something every month we have a little bit on accessibility or a large session on accessibility. We're talking about creating accessible content. So if you have anything that you can bring to the table, we're looking to put together maybe like a panel discussion or something around October, I believe, is when we're looking to put that together. So we're looking for anybody who's dealing with accessibility, whether it be with Drupal or the greater accessibility on the web. Those kind of things, we are really looking to have some people talk about that in the next couple of months. We're specifically right now on our websites dealing with making sure that we're at the WCAG 2.0 AA level throughout all of our sites, which is basically 508 but more. So some of the things that we had discussed about talking about accessibility is things like, what is 508? What is WCAG? How do you break these specific things down? What does, text content does not meet minimum color contrast levels to base element actually mean? How do you test for that? How do you, these type of things that sort of let us as developers and even content editors be able to create accessible content for our users, accessible PDFs, accessible document files, all that kind of stuff. So we are looking for people to come in and to talk about accessibility within the next 2 months. Our tentative date for that is going to be the end of October. So a little bit of background for people new to the group. This is it's a sub-user group off of the Web and Accessibility Guild from the New York State Forum. I am the sort of the organizer of the group. My name's Eric Steinborn. I'm from the Office of the Attorney General's. I've been with the state for, as of next week, 10 years. I've been with the state. I was at DCJS for 8 years, state police for 1, and then just recently moved over to the Office of the Attorney General in Troy. We maintain multiple Drupal sites. All of our sites have thus far been in Drupal 7, which has been the de facto standard until about last year when Drupal 8 was released. Drupal 8 is in a sort of state of the way that Drupal works is that Drupal is modular, so you can install different pieces of functionality as modules to it, similar to WordPress. Familiar with WordPress, WordPress plugins, Drupal modules, same thing. But when we moved from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, we moved from a just sort of not really spaghetti code, but more of a functional programming to an object-oriented programming using the Symfony framework in the back end for Drupal 8. And so what that does is that changes the underlying code for every single module. So every single module then needs to be upgraded from the Drupal 7 version to the Drupal 8 version. There is a lot of lag still in upgrading modules. So moving from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 has been one of our larger tasks, because there are many benefits that Drupal 8 brings to the table, but Drupal 8 is not yet equal, and won't be for a very long time, to Drupal 7's code availability for modules. So that being said, that'll be the second part of the discussion today, is talking about Drupal 8 and coming from Drupal 7, how do we move from there to Drupal 8, as well as in the beginning piece, we talk a little bit about how Drupal 7 works, or Drupal as a whole works for all of the different roles here. So, any questions before I get on with it? So I'm not quite sure. Like I was thinking of maybe putting together something for the beginner's corner, is what we call it, for our Drupal user group. But I ended up just sort of outlining it, because the way that Drupal works is that there are so many different ways to do. My go-to statement is there's 100 ways to do 10 different things in Drupal, and 90 of them could be considered correct. 10 ways, you definitely did it wrong. Like I don't care who you are. So there are so many different ways to go about it. So what I'm going to show you guys is a little bit of what I think these roles will get out of Drupal, and coming from a developer background, I work to meet the needs of my content editors and my designers, if I'm not the designer, but I usually am, in order to make the best experience for them. Because ultimately, as a content editor, you are in charge of publishing content to the web and representing your agency or your company or whomever you are working for. And that comes with all of its own set of challenges, workflow things. We're talking about setting up accessibility, all those different things that we had discussed. So the first thing that really makes a lot of sense to me to talk about as a content editor is this idea of structured content. So what is structured content? Well, structured content is not Microsoft Word. Structured content is multiple form fields that sort of create an architecture of your content. So normally, let's talk about the traditional content editor role. It's here's a doc file that's named doc.pdf or doc.word, whatever, right? Wow, my document .doc. It's early. And you make some edits to it. You shoot an email over to your supervisor, who then has to make an edit to it. So your supervisor pulls it up. She renames it mydoc_myname.doc. And then she sends it to her manager. And then by the end, you have mydoc_her_name_1_final_ no, really, this is the final one _001_date_doc.pdf. And then you're now responsible to take that and put that onto the web. Well, that's an untenable process, except we've been doing it for years. The idea behind having the structured content is the proper way to structure the content is to get together with your development team, your design team, and your stakeholders, and to determine what type of content they will want to display on the site. And then what you do in Drupal is you build that content type. So what I have here is I have an example Drupal 8 website here, And if we look at the current content types, not comment types. If we look at the content types, this is a base Drupal installation. We have two content types. We have basic page and article. Basic page, if you look at it, if we go to create basic page here, you'll see that you have what you would traditionally think of as content editing. You have a title for your content and then a big old body text with a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. You can add an image in here. You can format your text to all these different sides. You can add block quotes to your stuff. You can add numbered lists, bulleted lists. You can link things, bold them, italicize them. Now this is just the basic HTML version. There's a full HTML version that allows you to add tables and add line breaks and add row remove formatting. So you have subscript and postscript, and all these are superscript. Strike out the text that's never supposed to be used because it's inaccessible. So it's these kind of things that we don't want to. That's not structured content, because I have no way to pull out the content that is important to the people who want to see it from this body text without lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of regular expressions, which is like programmatic searching of your content, and you don't want to get into that because then you'll end up with just a big mess. So what we have here is this other content type called article. So if we take a look back here at article instead of basic page, nope, that's not what I meant to do. Article. So you'll see article has a couple additional things. So now article has your title, has your body, but now you can associate and group different articles with tags. You can categorize them. And then you can list a list of those tags, and then you could take, you can create a bulleted list of every single article that was tagged with NYS forum. And now anything that's tagged with NYS forum will now display up on your screen altogether. But then you could have a whole other page that was set to only show items that were tagged with Drupal. So now you have two separate pages utilizing the same content type of article, but they've been filtered in the back end by a developer to only display tags that match those things. These are pretty simple things that sort of help organize your content. But now, instead of including that image inside of your WYSIWYG by clicking the insert image field and uploading it and all of this stuff, you actually have an image field right inside of your content type. So now, because this is a separate field, I can very easily extract out this image, the tag, and the title, and now I can display a list with the image that I uploaded for it, with the title that links to the content, based off of whether it was tagged as NYS forum or with Drupal. Let's go even further. So let's actually edit one of those content types. So here's article. We have our body field, our image field, and our tags field. Let's add another field. So Drupal 8 comes with a bunch of default fields out of the box. But let's say we wanted to now add another text. And we wanted this to be called location. We're just saving all the default values. So now when I come back into here and I refresh, I now have a location field inside of my content type. So now, instead of saying all of my information here, and then saying located at this address, now I've pulled my location out. Now I'm at 123 Main Street, Albany. Now what I can do is I can say Show me only in that list. I want to see all the things that are tagged with an NYS forum that have an image that are at 123 Main Street, Albany. So it's this idea of being able to pull out individual pieces of content. Some of the most here's an example of something that was originally done in Drupal that's no longer, but it uses the same sort of setup here. So back when I worked at DCJS, we had a Drupal website that posted missing child information. And every single one of these fields could have, and was previously, a body content with all of the stuff listed in there. So there was no way to say, get me all of the, all of the children with brown hair. Like, I just saw a kid that looked like they were lost. Are they maybe on the missing child list? So they had brown hair, brown eyes, and they looked like they were white, or they looked like they were, and I was in Albany. You could go through and with all of this content as individual fields, filter down a list that pulls that up. Otherwise, you need to use some sort of really highly tuned search engine that's going to search that really generic body field that we talked about. So it's this idea of creating content that is going to be easily searchable for your end users. It's going to be you're going to be able to display it properly and in all kinds of different formats, depending on how you've laid it out. So in my opinion, when in doubt, the more fields you're going to be able to add to be more detailed with your content type, the better. So that sort of leads into, and this was probably, again, it could have used a little bit better organization, but this is the idea now of owning your own content as content editors. Because as a developer, I just want to tell you, just completely honest, I don't want to post content on the website for you. I don't. I want to create new cool I want to create new cool pages for you. I want to create new views that aggregate content in different ways. I want to create cool visualizations based off of data that we've created a content type for you to enter into your site. I don't want to publish your PDFs to the website. I don't. And every single possibility that I get to make you be able to update your own content so that you don't have to email me, waste your time emailing me, telling me the instructions on every single page that you have to go to, all the PDFs that you want to have updated, when you already know it and you could just do it yourself. I mean, it's not that it's a bother to me, it's that my time is better spent developing new features for you, and your time is better spent updating your content quickly. And we all, it's a win-win situation. So the idea of Drupal here gives you the capability to own your own content now and not have to be, beholden to somebody's email that, went on vacation but didn't put up an autoresponder. 3 days later, you find out, oh, they went on vacation, so you send an email to the other person in the team who's so busy. They were totally fine 3 days ago, but now they're too busy to be able to post your stuff. It's that same type of story that goes on and on and on. So we talked about creating this article. So let's create this article, right? So NYS forum cool article. Anytime you're creating temporary content, always add cool to it. It just makes it look cool. So tags, let's say NYS forum image. Just standard images here. Okay. There. That's me. And here's a nice thing about Drupal 8 as well, is that Drupal 8 is going to, by default, enforce some accessibility standards. So alt images for your text, or for your alt text for your images. Wow, that was reversed. They're required. See the little red icon there, that means that you cannot save this content type without saving it alt text. So let's say Eric Steinborn avatar. I'll say this is the work approved avatar. So they have a different one, and that wasn't work approved. And the location 123 Main Street. So now I'm going to save it and I'm going to publish it. So here's my content. Not really formatted too well. You know, I haven't changed the display on this. I haven't gone into design. I've literally set this up at, I don't know if it's a date on here, but I installed this site around 8 o'clock this morning. So it's just a very basic site. Just set it up. So we have comments that are built in. And you see this, it's weird, this location field that I added after the content type was built is actually below the comment field. Well, I don't want that. So let's go into manager, let's go into developer mode really quick here. So we have our fields for our content type, and then we have our form display. So this is showing us how our form will display to an author who's writing the content. So we can say your authored by is an autocomplete. Your image is an image field, and we're going to display the thumbnail to it. Or we could display the whole image to them. Lots of, we're not going to go into tons of customization here. But let's just go into the display. And so this is where your basic layout comes into play. So here's the comments, and then here's the location. So the location, if I drag this now up above comments, and I save it, here's my location now above my comments, because I didn't want my comments to be above my location. So here's this, and I say, oh, you know what? I forgot that we have this location on here. So now it's as easy as clicking edit, removing the content, and saving it. Now I could also unpublish it if I wanted to, which just removes it from view. But here we go. Now I've removed that. Now Drupal 8 comes with this idea of quick edit, where you can hit quick edit and actually edit the information that you've added into here just on the fly. So this is actually in Pennsylvania, and it's on they're in Albany, Pennsylvania. Who knows? It's on 2nd Street. Save that. Now it's done. Except that was a little bit weird that it added location onto that. Let's just double check here. That was weird. But I think it's the label thing. Maybe it was okay to change the label. Anyway, now if I go into the full edit screen again, you'll see that that my location did change there. So we've talked about, it gives you lots of structured content so that you can write the exact you can add the exact information. It's easily searchable. It's easily indexable, and it's easy to display how you want to display it. And we'll actually get into some display stuff as we talk about it as developers. Like you'll see structured content and structured content types are in both content editor and the developer, because it's important to both. We talked about easily updating it. We talked about owning your own content. So let's talk a little bit about workflow. So there's a module called workflow that allows you to, when you are editing your content. So we have these two options here. We have publish and unpublish. But if we just very quickly enable a workbench module, go into here, we have this idea of creating new revisions. questions while I'm just really quickly looking this up here?
I have one. Suppose if my website is in production and I want to edit something, like the way you edited the location. So once you edit it, it automatically gets deployed. Like I just refresh my page as a user. That's it.
Yes, if you have no workflow built in, or you're a super user that has the ability to just skip the workflow process, it would just automatically be updated right on the website. Drupal 8 has a lot of caching built into it, so there you might have a rule in place that clears the cache after you publish something. But yeah, as long as you have the capability to publish content, whatever you publish becomes published. So what if you don't want that, right? What if you don't want the ability to, you don't want the content that you are editing to be, you don't want the content that you're editing to be available immediately for publish. Moderation. There it is. Okay. Again, things are a little bit different in Drupal 8, so one more time. Refresh. So a quick enablement of that module, and then a quick checkbox to say enable the moderation for this. Now, instead of giving me the save and publish, or save and keep publish, or save and unpublish, I now have the capability to create a new draft. So let's say I want this to be no address available. Because somebody said, hey, it says on the website that it's there, but we're not sure yet. So we're going to say, okay, I'm going to create a new draft. So here's my new draft. You can see, you can't see it on this screen because the contrast is too low, but there is a pink background on the content. Just change the background color from their old color to something you can just see better on here. So now this is red. So if I open up a new incognito window, I go to NYS Forum VM, which is my site here. Go to Node 1. All right, so here's the published version of that. I published it with no address. So let's say they said we want it to be 123 main. Now if I create a new draft, I go back into here. See, I refresh the page. Location is still published as no address currently available, but in my moderation, my draft mode is set to 123 main. So now, as a content editor who has now edited this content, I'm going to say, hey boss, take a look at this, give me the okay. Or there's also some automated systems in place where you can, once you put something into a draft mode or a needs review mode, because right now I believe it's in needs review or draft mode, so you can actually put it into request review, and then you can have somebody with a dashboard, a publisher with a dashboard that shows all the content that needs review, like your press officer, somebody who's going to be looking at all the content, or digital information officer, whomever is okaying all of your content. They can see a dashboard of this stuff, or you can set it up to actually automatically email them whenever you have a new draft that they need, or a new piece of content that they need to review, or a new edit that they need to review. So it's this capability to now have control of your own content. Your workflow is now within Drupal. It's no longer back and forth emails. And if they see something that they don't like, they don't have to edit that document, send it back to you, and then have you add it to the website because they don't know how. Everybody has an account on the site and has limited access enough that they're able to edit the content that they're supposed to edit and publish it if they have access to publish it.
That module, is that part of core, or is that a separate workflow module?
So core comes with only the publish and unpublish, but it's Workbench is the name of the module that allows you to have the moderation, and the Workbench moderation is the one that does the states.
Two separate modules?
Yeah, Workbench moderation, I believe, requires Workbench to be installed in order to work.
And is that not pretty much the best out there, or is that pretty much what you recommend?
Yeah, it's one of the things that you can see when you're on Drupal.org. So this is something to be aware of. So on Drupal.org, that lists all of the official what are called contrib modules. So they're contributed by the community and they've been approved by Drupal at some point, the Drupal community by some point, to be a module that's listed on their website and be published and be able to use like command line in order to get the content out there, or get the modules onto your site. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this project information snippet, and what you'll see is like this Workbench moderation is installed on 25,000 sites. Sometimes you'll find a module that's installed on 3 sites. But if it's a module that does exactly that weird one strange thing that you needed to do, you may risk that. But in this case, Workbench is one of the. I don't know of any other offhand that deals with sort of moderation states of content. So this has always been my go-to is the Workbench moderation module.
Eric, so that's what you would use to set up what we call an approval workflow from unit
Correct.
to their supervisor to the communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we set this up for the Office of Victim Services. They have a Drupal 7 site where they have we had three different roles. We had editor, publisher, and site admin. Now we called it site admin to make them feel super powerful, but they were not administrators because you can really break Drupal if you are a full administrator. Like I've broken Drupal a lot. So what we do is we give them the capability to delete content. That's basically their role. They can delete content and add new users. But publishers and content editors, they don't have the capability to delete content because you could just unpublish it and make it go away from the website. But the actual act of deleting a content that is no longer ever going to be useful, but it was useful at one point in time, that's kind of a stretch, unless you're doing like a big redesign. You know, I had an event for this thing, and you know, I don't want it on the site anymore. Well, no, it can go into an archive, and Drupal deals with all of that stuff automatically if you built it that way.
If you unpublish it from your site, can an external user search and find it?
No, if it's unpublished, unless it'll be cached by
It's cached,
search
but it's
engines
not.
and stuff, but it's not cached on your site. It's completely completely removed from view. But again, Google will cache it, and you can view the cache from Google. So it's I wouldn't rely on it being completely wiped from the internet. But as far as your site goes, it's no longer on your site. But that goes with anything. That goes with any CMS. That goes with any static HTML pages. It goes with anything. Yeah. So what we had set up for OVS was the content editor creates the content. They set it to a needs review status, which shot off an email to the publishers that they selected from a list. So they knew that Kim was on vacation, but somebody else, this other person, was here. So they checked that other person, they sent it to that other person, who then looked at it, reviewed it, and then hit the publish button, and it went out onto the website. Or said, oh yeah, this needs to be fixed, either changed it themselves or sent it back because there was like a whole new information or something. So it gives you the capability to not, again, just have full control over your content and your workflow process. And not even that. It's so when I explain it that way, that's the way that it works the easiest. But if you have some crazy, weird, convoluted workflow where 27 people need to approve this, you could have 27 different states. You could have as many as you want or as few as you want. You could have no states, like it was on default, either published or unpublished. Call it a day. The only caveat is that in order to be a reviewer, be a publisher, be a site admin, etc., you need to have an account on the site. So you can set it up. You can actually link Drupal in with your single sign-on service or your Active Directory or whatever. So you just click a button, it logs you in. If you're at work, it just logs you in automatically. You have all of your roles assigned based off of your LDAP roles and permissions. Or if you're outside of work, you just log in with your Active Directory, and then so those are the kind of things that are available to the content editor. So we talked about this. We talked about integrating images, but Drupal allows you to mess around with video, create interactive data for charts and graphs, different graphics like SVG graphics. All of those things are capable in Drupal. You also have this really nice setup for automated publishing, so you can actually set up to publish content in the future or unpublish it at a specific time. So if you decide, like this weekend, I actually have to update a web page on our intranet on Saturday to change a URL for a server that's changing. I could have actually set that up if that site was in Drupal. It's a static HTML site. But if that site was in Drupal, I could say, all right, well, Saturday at 2 p.m., publish this thing, and then go home and, cook on my grill and not have to worry about it. But I'll have my laptop on my grill. Not really, but I'll be VPNing in for 10 minutes to change a link on a website. But those kind of things go away when you start using this automated system. One of the other things we added to the OVS site actually was this idea of expired content. Like how many people here have content on their websites that is more than a year old? Keep your hands up if it's more than 3 years old. Keep your hands up if it's more than 5 years old. I could go on and on. When was the internet invented? I mean, that's the kind of stuff there. So there's this ability to expire content or put content up for review when say every 6 months we want to review this policy that we put out onto the website. Every 8 months we want to review this content for victim service providers to make sure that it's up to date. Every 3 months even, every month even, every 30, whatever you want to do, you can set that up, and it's all customizable based off of what the users want. Now, developers, it's really important to understand what your content editors, what your stakeholders want out of the site in order to build that proper structured content. And actual development in Drupal is difficult. It's hard to get started in Drupal without some sort of clear direction, without some sort of sample something that you want to create. For me, I got started with Drupal building the missing persons clearinghouse, missing child application. So I had a very pinpointed goal that I needed to attain, and then I formed Drupal around that goal. So, think of some hobby that you have or something. You want to show off your baseball card collection or your collection of Doctor Who action figures. Whatever you want to do, you can create this website for that. Yes, I have a collection of Doctor Who action. But you can create a website around that and have this end goal to create this really cool thing. A couple of things that I would recommend to start from, a couple of websites. Buildamodule.com walks you from 0 to 60, all the way through Drupal 7, PHP object-oriented programming, website development, responsive web design, all the way through Drupal 8. Everything. It's worth its weight in gold as far as I'm concerned for learning. Drupalize Me is another one. They have there's also a lot of free videos out there as well. Any kind of Drupal development is great. So as a developer, you're dealing now in Drupal 8 with standards-based object-oriented PHP. Your CSS is written in SMAX CSS, which stands for SMA, Cascading Style Sheet. SMAX stands for Scalable and Modular Architecture for CSS. So what it is it's standards for your CSS. So it's writing, it's writing the content for your CSS, or writing your CSS for a specific purpose, not necessarily writing it for each element individually. So you could have, this is your basic class, and here could be your modifier, things of that nature. Drupal 8 was written from the ground up with SMAX as the default for CSS. So as we already experienced today, adding modules to the site is really simple. I did it on the command line using a tool called Drush, which is Drupal shell. And but as a person who's not using Drush, and you should be using Drush if you're using Drupal, as a developer, it's as easy as downloading the zip file off of the site right here, extracting it, and then just copying this workbench thing over to the site, over to your site file structure, and then refreshing your page. The module appears there. You enable it. Call it a day. Configure it. That's a lot of what Drupal is configuring modules to work together. Because you could, if you are the rockstar object-oriented PHP developer, just do all of this by yourself and never use another contributed module. But then you are now required to maintain all security updates on that. You're required to maintain all of the bugs, all of the fixes. The idea of open source and Drupal is the idea of community. And rather than spending my time developing all these custom features, a quick Google search will show me a module that shows me what to do. And if I install the module and I find a bug in it, the community in Drupal is just, I've not met a nicer community of developers who are really trying to help you and help you get what you need to do. So as an example of Drupal 8, again, I said the module scene is a little bit rocky right now as far as Drupal 8 goes. So I'm consistently running into bugs. And I'm not just keeping them to myself. I'm reporting the bugs to the module developers who are responding to me and helping me fix the issues. Or, as an example, a module that I'm trying to utilize that adds a font support to Drupal to just quickly interface into like Typekit or fonts.com or FontFace, any of these things. When I installed his module, it was breaking my command line Drupal piece, and I did some investigation, found out that it was because he used the @ sign, which is a reserved keyword in Drupal 8, and so when I found that out, removed it, tested it, everything worked. And so I sent it, I was like, hey, this is this. And he's like, well, I couldn't get it to work. It turns out that my VM had a higher version of the Symfony framework, which is the PHP framework that Drupal 8 uses, than his Acquia Dev Desktop version. But eventually Drupal will be using this more up-to-date version. So I caught a bug that didn't even exist yet on his system, but will exist in the future when he gets upgraded. And so now he's just going to add the @ sign in quotations, and everything's good. So it's just this idea of sharing your experiences and trying to help out the community that really is really one of the things that I love the most about Drupal. So we talked about creating these custom content types. So we just got very basic into these article content types. We added a text field, whatever, big deal. But there are modules out there that can, allow you to add there's a location module that will actually take a location that you put into it, geocode it through some sort of geocoding service, provide you back a Google map from that, and then display it on the site to the user. All you did was type in an address. There are modules out there that allow you to restrict numbers to Social Security numbers. There are numbers, the phone numbers. There are modules out there that allow you to upload multiple, do drag and drop fields for files and for images. Allow you to, there are lots and lots and lots of different fields there. So you have the capability to really create this highly structured content that can be displayed in so many different ways. And let's talk about aggregation. So we have this our cool article here, and I'm actually just going to publish it right from here. And that's another nice thing too. So I'm looking at the screen. I don't have to go back into the edit mode and go back and say save and publish. I can just from the screen here, I was able to just check the box that says, all right, I want to publish this thing. Oh, and you know what? I also don't want to have comments on my website. So I'm just going to go into the uninstall section here of my module list. I'm going to search for the comment module. Comment field type is using the following field. I guess it's a little bit different than Drupal 7 was. So it wouldn't let me uninstall it because there was a actual comment field inside of the article content type. So I just had to remove that. So now nobody can ever add a comment onto my website. So if I go back to this page, I refresh, no more comment field. Because comments are the devil's work on the internet.
If you had a page or two that you wanted to allow comments, would you be able to do that just on select pages and that module?
Yeah, so as an example, the module will be installed globally, but you'd say I want comments on these two content types, but you have 20 content types, right? Say I only want it on blog posts, and I just want it on blog posts, right? You can just go into the blog post, enable comments on that one, and then none of the other ones will have comments. So it wouldn't be uninstalling it globally like I just did here. So now nobody could ever have comments until I re-enable the comments module.
By content type, but you don't have like granular page level control over that.
Well, so comment is the module itself that has it seems, I believe, and this is sort of where the Drupal 7, Drupal 8 differences start to come out. So Drupal 7 just had comments built in, and you could just check a box and say add comments to this page. I don't think that's how Drupal 8 is working. Drupal 8, you actually have to add the comment field into the content type. So yeah, you would just add the comment field to whichever content type you wanted, save that, and then you have comments for that content type.
So no, then.
Yeah, it's not.
So I can't pick a particular page built on a content type. Like say I have 20 of them, and and like 2 of them I want content or comments on, but all the rest I don't, but they're all, like, you can't get that granular.
Well, you could, you wouldn't do that in the content type itself. That's a bit, like, that's getting a little bit more technical here, but I can definitely explain how you do that. So with Drupal, there's this idea of views and blocks. So what you can do with it is you can add different things in different areas. So let's say you wanted to have, in this instance, you would probably have 2 different content types. One would be this page comments, and the other one would be this other page comments. And then you could then create a view that said only display this page comments, the content, on this specific page. And you save that, you have that block to a page, and now that one page will have that comment block on it, and no other pages will. You do the same thing with a limitation on the other page. So now both of those pages have comments on them, no other pages do, and those comments are specific to each page. So comments from here won't show up here, comments from here won't show up here.
It's configured through the views module.
Yeah. So views was a contrib module in Drupal 7. One of the biggest changes in Drupal 8 is that views is now in the core. So there's this concept of core, which is what you download from Drupal.org as the base install of Drupal, and then the contrib, which is all the contributed modules like Workbench and the different things like that. So having views in core makes it so that it's officially supported by the Drupal Association, who maintains Drupal core, and it's also much more powerful now, and it's being used throughout Drupal rather than having to sort of shoehorn it in, which is how it was done with Drupal 7. So as an example, if I click on content here, this is a view. When in Drupal 7, it wasn't a view. So talking really quick, so we talked about this aggregation piece. So we have this one article here, and let's add another article. We'll call it the other cool article, no body content. NYS forum. So we're going to say publish this. So now we have 2 pieces of content that we can see right here. Both are articles. So if I go into structure and views, I can quickly create, and this is the nice thing of the Drupal 8 actually made this a bit easier as well. So I'm going to call this my NYS forum articles. Can you guys see this from the back? Do I need to increase the font size here a little bit better? And we're going to show content of article tagged with NYS forum. You see that's an autocomplete as well. So NYS forum was a tag that was already there, and I'm going to do newest first. Now what I'm going to do is create a page for it. All the page and the path are all set up there, but I'm just going to make this the arts. So it automatically gives you the ability to create a pager. You can set it up to be an unformatted list, an HTML list, a table, a grid. So it's displaying this specific type of element as these specific type of displays. So each content type has a display. So these teasers will only be like the title of the article, but we can change that coming up. So I'm just going to really quickly save this. If I scroll down, I can see that these are. So this is a live preview of what I'm displaying. So this is what my teasers are showing for each one of my articles. So I'm just going to save this really quickly. I'm not going to make any changes in here, but there's tons and tons and tons of stuff that you can do inside of here. So now if I go to /arts, I see this is my list of both of my articles that were tagged with NYS forum very quickly. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know, this kind of doesn't look really great in the teaser mode. So in my display for article, I'm going to come to the teaser view, and I can see all of these things are actually here. I don't actually want the image in here, so I'm just going to take image and I'm going to disable but I do want the location. Silly force click. Let's see. So what I want is I want the body, the location. I don't want the tags, and links are actually the read more links that you see here. I actually don't want read more. I just want them to click on the title. So I'm actually going to remove that as well. And the location, I want that to be inline. And the body, I actually want to trim this to like 10 characters, just to go crazy. So now, so I've changed the display for that, and so this page, refreshing it, now shows my link, submission information, the no body content. So this had no body content. Ironically, it's now cut off to no body. And then so here are my locations. If I click on this, then it'll bring me to the full. Oh, it's actually better if I go to this one. If I click on this, it actually goes to the full default display, which then shows the content as I showed before. So it's this idea of aggregating content all together. So if I now, I probably don't need to do this because I feel like it makes a lot of sense. This is not tagged with NYS form. This is tagged with Drupal. If I publish this, so here's my non-NYS form tagged thing. And if I go back, refresh, obviously it's not going to be there. So not only is structured content structured based off of your content fields that you've chosen, but it's also structured based off of the taxonomy terms that you're using to categorize this stuff. So that's what this is called. So that tags is called a taxonomy. So you create these lists of taxonomy terms, and then each list has its own terms within inside of it. So I could say, rather than referring to tags here, I could create, let's say as an example, eye color and race, right? We have eye color and race that have two completely different things, but they need to be a set standard list of items because they're all going to maybe go into another database. So they're referring to all of these standardized eye colors and races that we have inside of our database. So you now have two taxonomies that both have the information for both of those things inside of them that can then be referred to in different content types. So if you're creating a content type for a person, you could then include both of those taxonomies inside of there as sort of drop-down lists or autocompletes like we were seeing there. So that gets a little bit into the designer piece, right? So as the designer, you can lay things out a little bit differently than it's based off of by default. But that's sort of where it begins, because now what you have is not only is all of the sub-themes are now responsive by default. So the base theme that you see here is this really ugly blue. It's called Bardic. It's the default theme. It's just to get you started in Drupal. But what you end up doing is you can create customized themes. I mean, you look at ny.gov or the governor's website or any Drupal website at all, and most of them don't look like this because they have these base themes that you build your custom theme off of, and they're all responsive out of the gate. Drupal 8 comes with responsive images built in, so you just apply a responsive image style to an image that you have inside of a content type, and now it creates all of the different views for that based off of different image sizes, so you're not loading 8 megabyte JPEGs that are this big on a device that fits in your hand, or barely fits in your hand like my iPhone. But the biggest change in theming, not just the object-oriented programming piece of it for Drupal 8, but it's the idea that they're now using, rather than PHP template, they're using Twig as their templating engine. So I'll give you an example of something that was in Twig. So a template written in Twig. So what you'll see here is these curly braces and these double curly braces. So double curly braces are going to insert your variable names, your variable values, and your single curly braces indicate some sort of filter or some sort of logic. So now you're writing logic in your templates, not in JavaScript, not in PHP, but in Twig. So as an example, this line right here, for item in items, it's a for loop that just runs over every single item that comes back for this view. So this is a view Twig template. So what this actually does is this is a Twig template that I modified to add the Bootstrap panel, the collapsible panel, to an FAQ on our website. So you click on the FAQ title, which is right here, and then it opens up the corresponding panel. So to do that, I just added this the panel classes to it, and then you add this data toggle collapse to there. This is all Bootstrap sort of inside baseball, but so what I did here is I used the item.question variable as the target, and then gave an ID to the panel itself that needs to be opened and closed, the same ID. So it's pointing to this ID, and so Bootstrap is automatically configured to say, if this anchor matches this ID, open and close it, call it a day. Then I added a couple of little icons onto here, and show you really quickly. Show you what that looks like. So there's lots of changes from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. We'll get into those in a minute here. But just wanted to give you like this idea that Drupal isn't just for nerds like me. Drupal is for everybody in that content process, that workflow, everybody in the design workflow, everybody in the requirements gathering setup. Getting everybody together to build your system the way that it needs to be built is so important in Drupal. Because while it's easy to do these things very quickly and make modifications, once you get to a certain part and you've built your architecture for your site, it's hard to go back and totally change that whole thing again. Because the way the Drupal works is once there's content in your database for a content type, it is nigh impossible to actually remove or modify the way that content was added to the site without going into your database and running tons of custom SQL scripts. And I would refrain from doing that as much as possible. This didn't work. All right. Well, basically, it looks like Bootstrap's collapse component, which is this guy here. So that's what that that's what that Twig template does. Except it also has like it has the little chevron up and down pointy arrow on the side of it. But that's it. So adding the whole, so we're using Bootstrap as our base theme, and we have a sub theme off of that. So what we do is we utilize those Bootstrap pieces too. All right, so we already talked about we need people to come up here and talk, and we need to spell accessibility correctly, and also need to talk about some accessibility stuff. So, any questions before I go?
Can you just show a little bit about the table module and various types of tables that you can use? Like maybe if they're sortable, we have sortable options versus a static table.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. Good, man.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. See you. So part of that formatted list that we have is we have this idea of HTML table list. So what we get is a HTML list, not table. I was wondering why I didn't see this screen. So here is our table options. So right now, all we have is this title field. So the table display uses fields rather than content. So before we were saying, show us the teaser of each content piece. This actually uses the individual fields as a reference to that content type. So now if I wanted to display the image or I wanted to display the location, I have to add all those manually. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. So I'm going to do location, add that, and then body content, and that's it. Just apply these default. So now you'll see, here's my table, title, body, location. Title doesn't have a label on it, so we'll just add a label. Come on, I did add a label, right? I did not. Oh. So here's your title, your body, and your location. So let's save this view. Go back to my articles. Now, to be completely 100% honest, I have not played with tables in Drupal core yet, because we've only ever used the Bootstrap theme, which actually creates their own version of responsive tables. Which basically what it does is it says you set a minimum width to the table container, and then anything smaller than that, it just scrolls the table left and right. But in this instance, it's just setting all of the widths end up being percentage widths. So that's how the table is going to work. I mean, it's a responsive best practice to not use tables whenever possible. I mean, when you have tabular data, it's the only thing you can do. But there are lots of responsive table modules that are out there. You can even write your own custom stuff in there. A friend of mine from Tax actually has a script that hides certain fields, like disables them once you get to certain resolutions, but then gives you the capability to toggle them back on, and then the table becomes scrollable. There are also other ones that will just reformat the content to rather than being row, column, it's just one big column with all the content sort of squished into itself. There's lots of different ways to do it. When in doubt, don't use a table if at all possible. You can fake tables pretty easily if you want something that sort of has the alignment and things like that. But as far as the actual tables go with Drupal core, you probably need something more based off of a control module if you're looking to have some responsive. Okay. Yep.
So when you upgrade from 7 to 8, and if your website is already in production, like how does that happen?
Oh, you don't upgrade from 7 to 8. You migrate from 7 to 8. So the way that it works is because you're dealing with a totally different architecture. So Drupal 8 actually comes with a module called migrate. So what it is it's a module that basically integrates with a script that you write in the back end. That as far as from what I have heard, It is a field-to-field migration. So you need to have all of the fields on the new site that you would be utilizing. So if you say you're using that location module that turns a location into a Google map, right? You're going to need that module installed on the new site before you can migrate the content from your D7 to but it is a manual process. There is no automation. There is no upgrading. It is a major version change. It's not like WordPress where you can just where WordPress does the whole upgrade for you. It is not an easy upgrade process to go
Because
through.
it has a database in the backend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is it like we can keep the database same and like the version 7 and 8 gets changed? And in the database, you will have all the fields and the content types you have created. So, can the same database be linked to Drupal 8?
So that's how the migrate module works with it. So you are not reusing the same Drupal 7 database.
Okay.
So you're starting with a new D8 database, and then the migrate module, when you configure it in the back end, will migrate all of your content from 7 to 8 from the database. So it'll be from the database to there. And as far as that goes, you're probably recreating your content types, your views, things like that, because there's so much difference between the two that the migration, it's not an upgrade, it's a migration.
So you create the content type and the views and everything, and the data can be migrated once the views and content type.
Yep. And there may be more that's migratable, but all of the migrations that I have heard of going from 7 to 8 are simply content migration. So as I said, I've been getting into Drupal 8. I just wanted to go over some bumps in the road that I've hit, the problems that I've had, and then the solutions that I've had to apply to them to overcome those speed bumps. So first things first, when I came to AG, we weren't using source control for our website code, and we needed to have source control as soon as possible. So we installed we have actually a GitLab server running in-house, which is kind of like GitHub, but for nerds, and it's internally hosted, and you don't have to pay GitHub an exorbitant amount of money for enterprise. And as we started working off of a Git flow workflow where we're creating new branches off of our source code and we need to push them in, I was running into an issue where I had to continuously type in git push set upstream, then to the remote branch, and then to my existing branch. But I found this really cool configuration called git push default. And if you set your git push default to current, what it will do is when you do your git check out your new branch, it will actually check out your new branch, and it will then, when you do a git push -u, it will actually set the upstream branch for you automatically. So it'll just push your new branch up to the Git repository, where before you would have to manually map that. It will just automatically do it for you now. So it saves probably 10 to 15 seconds of writing, typing every single time I have to create a new branch and push a new branch, which is every time you have a feature up. So then the rest of the stuff is all Drupal 8 stuff. So in Drupal 7, your settings.php file, if you created a file, a settings.php inside of a site name folder, so as an example, this site name is nysforum.vm. Probably can't see it all the way in the back there. But you would create a folder called nysforum.vm, and inside of that you'd have a settings file. And then whatever settings were in that file would override your regular default settings.php file. Well, that is not the case in Drupal 8. In Drupal 8, you have this new settings.local.php file. So if you look at a default settings.php file, you go all the way to the bottom. It's going to be at the bottom every time. You're going to see this little block of code. It's going to say, you'll see the command, the instructions here. So load the local development override. I do that's actually easier to read. So you'll see this line here. Well, this isn't actually easier to read. It's, that's better. So this is going to load local development configuration, and so this is where you'll just override any of your default settings. So this will say if we look and we find a local settings.local.php file in your directory, then we're going to load that. So as an example, here's my settings.local.php file. So this is all of my database connection information for my local VM. So it's just, it's all on my local host. It's just Drupal root because it's all locally internally on my VM. So what this does is this overrides what my settings.php database connection string was for my production database or my dev database or whatever code I'm pulling from, and it overrides it to use my local VM database. So there's a configure. So this is the same sort of thing where it's loading the local settings.php, but what this does is this loads development services.yaml. So Drupal 7 used info files, which were basically just smaller, like PHP-ish things. Now this I believe that's the case. Don't quote me on that. But now all of the configuration is stored in YAML files, which are structured configuration files. So they're tab separated. So so you have your parameters, and then in order to set one parameter, it has to have two spaces on the next line, and then the actual parameter itself has to then be two spaces, and followed by a colon, followed by a space, followed by the value. So it's very structured to set it up. So if you find that you're experiencing issues with your configuration, that's your YAML is probably screwed up. So as an example, so here we have the Twig configuration. So in Twig, we have this idea of debugging the code. And what the debug will give you is it'll actually give you a very long list of, really quickly, what it'll do is it'll give you a list of all of the Twig templates that are being used throughout the cascade until it gets to the content that you're looking to modify. Okay, so now if I go, because I wanted to show you what this debug looks like. It's really nice. It actually adds HTML codes, HTML comments inside of your source code or outside of your compiled source code in the browser, so that you can say, okay, I need to use X, Y, and Z Twig template. So it shows you exactly where it was generated from. You can also set up to auto reload and to turn off caching. So this has a lot of development configuration services that are inside. And the last thing is setting some, so for me, I need to set some special VM file paths. So by default, /tmp is not available on my VM. So what I need to do is I need to set my private file path to a path that I've created from my script. And then I also have to set my temporary path to another folder. Now it's a lot different than the way that Drupal 7 used to do it, in the sense that Drupal 7 used to actually be settings, file, temporary path equals whatever you're doing. So you'll see there's a big difference between these two lines here. So the first one starts with settings, the second one does config and then a whole bunch of square brackets and then the value. Well, in order to get those whole bunch of square brackets, here I can show you. So here is the source code with with the that's too much. With the theme debug turned on. So here is the content for my seal, like the OAG seal, as well as the link to the home page. So you'll see inside of the theme debug, it's saying you can use a theme hook for block. You can use a theme hook for block, and then the file name suggestions that it gives you are in order of specificity. So there is a block.html.twig, probably in the Bootstrap theme, but you could also use blocksystem.html.twig, blocksystembrandingblock.html.twig, but we're using block OAGnet bootstrap branding.html.twig. And so this, I can actually then go into my code. I could say, all right, this one looks messed up, so I'm going to copy that file name. Come into here, and I'm going to search for that file, and here it is. So this is all of that code that was used to generate that one block. And in here, it says very simply, this is the ending of the output. So I know where the beginning started, I know where it ended, and then everything inside of that was generated from that one twig. So let's talk about setting that temporary file path. So now that we have a fully up and running Drupal 8 site, I'm going to type in this command here. It's going to be drush. Use my VM here, and I'm going to say config -list. So what we have is a list of every single setting that can be configured inside of the entire Drupal site. Every single one of these can be set, and every single one of these has content associated with it, has configuration associated with it. So let's do this. So we talked about the system file, right? So this is where we actually set that there. So let's do this. Let's say drush config-get system.file. So I can do this for any of the configurations that were just listed. And here we go. So this right here is the content that matters. So this is all of the content that was published for, or this is all the configuration that is set for system.file. So I see system file path temporary is set to TMP. But in my PHP file, my settings.local.php, I set that to var www Drupal temporary path. So what's up with that? Well, it turns out, I don't know why this is the case, but this just shows you the default setup. What you have to do is add a tag called include overwritten, or flag, sorry. And so now what you're going to see is you're going to see that I did in fact override that temporary path, but in the config get without including overridden, it will not show me the default. So this is a nice way to say what was the default previously, and now I know it was /temp, and then if I do include overridden, I can make sure that yes, I did in fact override that configuration. So the easy way to find this, so then I can just say this, right? So I can say system.file path temporary. Now if I copy this in, you can see what I have here is actually exactly what was in here. So without even looking at how I have that set up, I can see the exact way that I need to set up my configuration for this. Now granted, it needs to be in single quotes in order to look, for it to actually work. I just wanted to show you that as an example. That completely identical. So configuration is a little bit different when it comes to your PHP, your local settings.php in Drupal. But it gives you the capability to now find any of the configuration options that you used to use, and then be able to find how to set them inside of your settings PHP. There's this new option that came in Drupal 7.5 and 8.18 called Trusted Hosts. And what you can do now is you can actually, in your settings.php, set what hosts you trust to use a certain to use your PHP. So now, this is my server, and then this is my other server, and then this is my VM. So I say this is the only time that this can be used on these two. This is on these two sites. So we talked about enabling twig development. If you are into theming, and again, theming is so much different in Drupal 8 than it was in Drupal 7, with Twig and with Smacks and with the new classy base theme. There's a really great open source theming guide that I found that actually showed me how to use JavaScript behaviors properly, and it's just called the Drupal 8 theming guide. So I'm going to have the links to all of these notes and everything. We'll have them posted onto the website afterwards. But what this does is it talks you through all the core themes. So you can look into all the core themes. So this is how Bardic works. Bardic is actually, while it's a core theme, it's actually based off of the classy theme. So it talks to you about all that stuff, how to use how to use Twig templates, how to do theme hooks, how to host libraries, attach libraries, how to use JavaScript, all of those different things. And so that actually leads me into this next piece, which is wrapping JavaScript. So when you need to include some sort of JavaScript in Drupal, there's a specific function that you have to wrap your code inside of in order for it to actually fire. Because if you don't do that, then you can't use the $sign for jQuery, and you also can't use the jQuery namespace for jQuery, because you don't know yet if it has been, if jQuery has been loaded. And Drupal 8 also does not load jQuery on every single page, so you have to specify that the script that you're using is going to require jQuery. So if you add this inside of here, so this is actually the only code that's being that's changing anything, is this one line here. All this other wrapped code is what you have to wrap it's called a Drupal behavior. You have to wrap your code inside of a Drupal behavior in order to map it properly to Drupal. So we actually use that over here. So here is a function that I had to write that what this does is this grabs your location string, and if you have a hash value onto it, that it will open up the collapsible panel from Bootstrap that you are going to. So it allows you to link to any FAQ on their FAQ pages, and then it will scroll to the FAQ and then open it up in a bootstrappy way. And that's all well and great, but I don't want to load this on every single page, right? Like I want to only load this on the pages that need that information on them. So what we do is in Drupal 8, we make a custom library. So inside of your main theme YAML files, you have this libraries. So here's just your global styling. These are all your Bootstrap scripts that are being required. But I wanted to create this one for the Bootstrap collapse specifically. And so I created this library called Bootstrap Collapse. So again, this is all YAML. And it has a dependency on jQuery. So we include the jQuery dependency because it uses the $sign in that script that I wrote. And here's the script that I wrote, collapseinit.js. And so when I need to use that library, I then just reference it inside of the in the twig template. So let's come over to here. Let's look at our templates. So that twig file that I showed you before that had the collapse elements that was adding all of the collapse pieces on it, that actually gets run every single FAQ. So this attached library actually attaches it in that spot, which is why you need to wrap it in the Drupal behavior. $sign will just blow up if jQuery is being loaded at the bottom and your content's being loaded here. It'll just blow up. So if I included this attached library on every single one of those rows of content, I would be including that library and having all that extra code. Every single FAQ that was added, it would add another one of those included scripts every single time. Blah, 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 blah. Now, it's not going to load it every single time, but it's just a bunch of HTML that doesn't need to be there. So what I did is I targeted, using the twig debug templates, the main container element for all of the FAQs, and then attach the library there. So actually what's happening here is so here's the section, and then you'll see this content here, right? So this content is what loads that other twig template. So that's like here are your 5 FAQs. And then I'm going to end that here, end my section, and then I'm going to attach my library at the end. So this was probably the coolest thing that I've been able to do in Drupal 8 so far. Previous to Drupal 8 and Drupal 7, I would have to find the correct theme hook, put it inside of my template.php file, and then write a whole bunch of stuff that says, if I'm on a view, and that view ID equals the ID or the name that I've named it, and then do a Drupal add JS, and then add this JavaScript inside of here. But then, unfortunately, it's not the same view on 2 pages, so now I need to write another hook that checks this thing. So every single time I add an FAQ block to another page, I then have to go into my template.php, and I have to edit that template.php. This, anytime an FAQ block comes up, it will automatically be added to that FAQ block. And it's done. I can add an FAQ block to any page that I want from now on. I don't have to manually a big change in Drupal 8 is that modules are no longer enabled, disabled, and then uninstalled. They are either enabled and installed, or they are uninstalled. So previous to this, I used to use the module stage file proxy to link to my production site to get all of my images and all my files so that I didn't break anything, but I didn't want to pull down all of my files. So stage file proxy just pointed it over there. And so with stage file proxy in Drupal 7s, you could set your origin, so whatever the place that it wanted to link to, on your site, then disable the module, and then it would never apply, so that whenever I pulled down my database from my production site, I could then just say enable stage file proxy, and all the configuration was already there, ready to go. That's not the case anymore with Drupal 8. Drupal 8, I have to pull the database down, then I have to enable stage file proxy, and then I have to, from Drush, I have to set the origin from the command line, or manually change it in the site. But I'm not going to do that because I've automated all the things. That's really how I like to do it. So they are not just sitting there in the database collecting dust. You know, they are their own thing that has to be either on or off. So blocks are a little bit different in Drupal 8. So blocks are how we So if we're looking at the blocks layout, we'll see that previous to Drupal 8, in Drupal 7, when you created a new view block in views, it would just show up in this disabled list, and then you just set it wherever it needs to go. Well, I added a new view, and I expected it to be here, and then it wasn't here. I was like, what is going on? Well, Drupal has this new idea of this place block button. And so in order to actually place the block that you've created in a view, you have to click on the place block button, and then that is where your block that you just created in your view, so you'll see here lists views, all these here. These are all the view blocks that have not been placed yet onto your theme. And not only that, but this is all specific to your theme. So blocks are now not shared from theme to theme. So where you've placed a block has to be replaced in another theme. So if I went here and I actually turned off OAGNet Bootstrap and I turned on Bardic, all of my block placement just wiped away. This is where Drupal 8's CMI, or Configuration Management Interface, comes in. I think it's interface CMI, Configuration Management I, whatever the I stands for, I'm not sure. But what it does is it actually allows you to save your settings for your site, so your block placement, your block layout, your content types, all of this stuff for your site inside of files, which is previous to this we used to have to use features to do that. So now we save it into these configuration files that are part of Drupal 8, and then we can push them from site to site, the same site in different environments. But the nice thing about it is you can actually save all of those block layouts, all those block placements in your configuration management. Then you can go ahead, disable your theme, re-enable it, all the configuration is gone, and then you just load the saved configuration from your site, and then boom, all your stuff is back. And that's very important because we talked about with Twig, or not with Twig, with the new theming system, that each theme, I don't know, actually we may not have talked about this. Each theme has its own settings that can be set to it. So as an example, the Bootstrap theme has a way that you can set the nav bar to be the inverse CSS version or the normal CSS version. You can just do that written code really quickly. Just say, nav bar space inverse, and it just works. But a caveat to that is that it will not apply until you uninstall the theme and then reinstall the theme. So when you do that, you lose all your block placement. You lose all of your configuration that you've set for that theme. unless you save it in CMI, and then you can reapply it again in, and it's worked. I've actually done it, and I was amazed that it actually worked without a problem. But then I just redid my database and figured out a way to not have to do that. I didn't want to test the whole thing yet. But that's just something here. So in my line here, it says something along the lines of themes have to. Maybe I removed it. No, you need to uninstall and reinstall a theme in order to apply new settings. So again, all the settings are stored inside of your YAML file. We talked about JS behaviors. We talked about blocks. Blocks are per theme. Modules are not disabled. They're uninstalled completely. Sometimes you're going to forget that modules need to be uninstalled, and Drupal 8 is going to come out and it's going to say, hey, there's some weird thing going on here where I'm supposed to see a module and I don't, and it's going to complain about missing modules. So it's something that may have been in your database. This is Drupal 7.5 and Drupal 8.1.8 that introduced this feature. I call it a bug more than a feature, but it yells every time that you try to run any drush command. So I actually had to run this horribly scary Drupal Drupal PHP inside of Drupal 8 in order to delete the settings for the custom search module, because I was getting this error on custom search because somebody had enabled the custom search module and then just deleted the file, or the way that Drupal 8 works right now is that they did uninstall it, but the uninstall script wasn't fully complete and it kept some crap in the database. So Drupal 8 still thinks that that module should be there even though it's not. So you've removed it, you thought you did your due diligence, but then suddenly the stuff still comes up and says that it's broken. So I had to run this very, very scary 2 lines of PHP code in order to delete it from my production database. It's scary to be in D8 land right now. It can really be scary. So we talked about creating a custom library and Twig templates. Oh, so Twig templates. So if you look for Twig templates online, there's this documentation on all of these different things that Twig can do for you. So you can write functions. You can use tags. So like for loops, if statements, importing things, including things, setting blocks, embedding things, all that stuff. But the real big feature here is in filters. So you can actually filter the content that you're displaying, the variables, and how before they come out to your list. I was having an issue where on that blocks page, so I can go to that page here. Oh, I can actually show you the. So here's what the. So let's just get the little chevron there. So on this page, so I'm actually using this as a variable. The do you have a question mark, and then all this stuff is a variable. So if you look at the URL, so copy the address, paste this into something you can see. So here we have this panel. So panel, do you have a question? Right. So that is created from that Twig template. Right here. So here's that item. So if I set this to just item.question, it's the whole question. So what it does is it would print out capital D do space U space have space A space question mark. Well, JavaScript, Bootstrap, Drupal, one of them, I think it's Bootstrap. I think it might be jQuery. Something does not like question mark inside of an ID because it's not a valid ID. So I went through all of this Twig documentation to try to find a filter to filter the content so that I could, there was URL and code. Well, that turned question mark into %3f. And then I said, okay, well, if I do replace, I'm going to replace the question mark with nothing. Well, you can't use question mark as replace because it doesn't understand what that means. Well, just going to use replace with a regex. Well, by default, Twig doesn't do replace with regex. So I went around and around and around and around and around. Then I found that Drupal actually has a few of its own extra filters built in to Twig. So here's trans. This is for the translation filters. So this will translate any, so if you have a multilingual site, this will translate any text that you add this T function to, or this T filter to whatever the language is that you have, that you're using. Here's placeholder, unsafe translations, cleaning classes, cleaning IDs, Drupal escape, all of these different things that'll work. The thing that I found that did exactly what I needed was, in fact, clean ID. This filter prepares a string for use as a valid HTML ID, which, if we look back at my code, is exactly what I was doing. I was trying to reference that anchor to an ID for a panel. So I add at the end of here, so you see item.question, and then a pipe, and then clean underscore ID. And what that does is it removes spaces, it removes capitalization, it removes punctuation, and it makes it into an actual ID without having to extend Twig, because that's possible. You can add all kinds of your own custom Twig filters or functions, whatever you want inside of here. So rather than utilizing and recreating the wheel here, I found these Drupal filters that just made it just amazingly simple for me to do. So now this functionality works. So if I, well, first of all, if I just click on this, it opens, but it didn't open previous to that when there was a question mark. But now if I hit this and refresh the page, it's going to open up that panel for me. So I started it off with close, and if I refresh the page, boom, there it goes. Right down to the panel is opened. And this views thing is a little bit difficult to fully explain here, but so this came to be in what we wanted to do. So we talked about the view modes for content and how you can set up content to display exactly the way that you want it to display. But when you're trying to group things inside of views, you need to group using fields. So if you use fields, you lose that really nicely formatted content that you've created. So there is this field inside of views called entity reference, or rendered entity, or rendered content, actually, right there. So rendered content allows you to pull a piece of content, any content, and then you can have another field above that field that is the field that you want to group by. So say you wanted to group by the category. You could choose that, group your fields by that field, and then it will just display the actual content in whatever display you want. So in this case, it would be, you wanted the teaser mode or something, you'd be able to put that in there. But that was just this weird thing. And it was funny because a lot of times when you Google for something in Drupal, you'll come back with not quite the answer you wanted, but you can make it work. And this was one of the weird things that gave me, no, it wasn't this one actually. There was another one. It came back and I got a build a module video that was just exactly what I wanted to know, and it was like 3 minutes long. And I was like, this never happens. I was so excited. Because with Drupal, there's a lot of digging if you're trying to do something, a little bit a little bit weird. That's that's it. I literally cannot believe I just talked for 2 hours. My wife would tell you differently, but that's just the way it goes. Did we have any questions on the WebEx? Come on, WebEx people. What are you doing? Probably all fell asleep to the sounds of my delightfully gurgly voice. All right, anybody here have any questions?
I noticed you're using Sublime Text. I've never used it. I don't have an Apple. Do you like that? Is that how you organize your projects, just using Sublime Text, or do you use any other IDEs?
No, I have so Sublime Text 3 is what I'm using. It has a concept of projects, so I can actually quick switch between different projects. Have multiple windows open with a project on each window. I just like the bare bones nature of it because I'm either in Sublime Text or I'm on the command line. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is just sort of basic writing of clean up.
Yeah, you can.
But it's available on Windows and Mac. And I guess I'll make one more push here. So we need people to talk about accessibility because it's super important. We need people to talk about Drupal stuff because it's super important. But we also need people to talk about web stuff because without participation from people in here, then these groups are going to ultimately die. Last week's we had a session, a planning session, and there were 2 people from this group, the web accessibility group, that were in the planning session. And some of the other groups had like 10, 15 people in them, and it was just like it was kind of embarrassing that we only had me and one other person there. So if you guys have anything that you can make, add to this, I mean, it could just be a simple thing. It's a 5-minute setup. My this last piece for me was 25-minute little snippets of information from learning Drupal 8. So anything can help, and we really need some participation. I can't do this every month. 2 hours up in front of everybody. So that being said, thanks everybody for coming. Just remember, if you didn't sign in, and we'll get in contact. Again, this meeting will be posted after today. We'll get it up and see the video will be there as well as all of the notes from today's presentation. So, all right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What you were showing. So these are custom scripts what you have written from scratch.
Which ones?
It was